Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Arrow Season 2, Episode 20, Seeing Red, which is better than Turning Red. Good movie, though. The episode is rated TV-14, so this video be. There will be spoilers for the episode and all the ones leading up to it. Another episode I absolutely loved. Holy crap. Okay, there are no deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, at least not mine, so I'm gonna dive right in. Yeah, let's see if I can remember what the first scene was. Let's see. Right, they're watching over Roy on the table, and yeah, really well done on. So we have the tension of it from right away. They talk about how they don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it can't be good. The all the miracle and blood in there, just yeah. And let's see, they they talk about what they're gonna eat. I like Felicity's line, "Big belly burger is giving me a big belly," and the so the line, yeah, the exchange about, she says, "Does it make me a bad person that I'm scared of him, even though something bad happened to him?" And Dig responds, "Felicity, there's not a force on earth that can make you a bad person." Which is a wonderful double kind of thing, because, like, on the one hand, that's a very sweet thing to say. But on the other, this is a comic book adaptation, and, hasn't really happened yet, but I feel like we're probably going to get something extraterrestrial at some point. I don't know, just a feeling. And I don't know if this is just like a wink and a nudge, or if they're actually like subtly planting that and going to pay off. They don't have to pay it off, but it was just a fun way to yeah. I mean, I believe she could do it convincingly, acting wise. Now, and then they agree on sushi, and then she turns around. How weird is it that I'm scared of you, even though you're just lying there? Oh, he's not right behind me, is he? Very, very nicely done, and he is flipping over tables like he's in an abridged script, and yeah, like, holy crap. And they do such a good job. Like, he really delivers on the performance. Like, we've never seen him this, like, dark and scary. It's not, we haven't had, like, nothing, and some of it was even before Miracle in his veins, but this is the furthest they've gone. I think that might bring us to the first of the flashbacks, and so we have another non-island flashback, and the what's it called? It's the yeah. I really appreciate their willingness to make Oliver look bad in, some in the present day as well, but yeah, like, he genuinely, obviously, I'm not saying that we should put, every rich person on an island. After all, we know that some of the stuff they get up to there is, I don't know, hopefully going to have consequences at some point. But he definitely needed to go through a change. He was just like, holy crap. But I do like so Laurel says, "You're cute when you're mopey." He says, "I'm not moping." um, you're kind of making her case. And, then she says, "Your default is mopey. It's part of your smoldering charm." And he's like, "I do have smoldering charm." And I like that he doesn't even know what trigonometry is. I mean, I don't either, but We're going to move on. Whatever. I don't care. I don't major in math. But honestly, okay. Now I feel like I should stand up for myself just a tiny bit. I think I might know how to do it, but here in Denmark, when we learn math, we're not always told what it's called, you know. Anyway, I think that brings us to the, let's see. Yes, so I self-deprecated too close to the sun, got distracted. Let's see. Yes, so yeah, Moira walks in and, yeah, she reveals that she's been listening, which it's one of those things, like at that point in the episode, I wasn't sure of, like, is this just, Moira being, manipulative and trying to control everything, or is this like her, mothering? And yeah, I think that brings, yeah, the fact that, he says, how can I be so unlucky? It was one mistake and it's going to ruin my life. And let's see, yeah, but the fact that, I got to go pregnant. Laurel's pregnant? It wasn't Laurel. And I think that brings us back to the future, present, and of the past, because the episode's over a decade old. But let's see. What was the next scene? I think it was maybe when there's a yeah. So a reporter is talking to the mayoral candidate. Sometimes it's really weird how these things line up. Just earlier, I rewatched an episode of season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, since the new season is coming out in the not too distant future, somewhere in time and space. But yeah, and Thea walks in, and immediately I'm thinking, I mean, Oliver said he wasn't gonna sabotage the campaign. Thea didn't. But ultimately, she's just, I thought she was gonna like give a speech there, say something about, but ultimately, yeah, and the throwing the words back in, there's the thing about, I have an experienced machinery or something like that. Well, you have an experienced machinery, I'm sure you'll work something. And yeah, the fact that she brings up the contract, like, yeah, I gotta say, I'm with the, that's lower than, is she trying to win a limbo contest or something? Like, holy crap. But yeah, I actually slept last night. Maybe it shows. More peppy than usual. Anyway, or recently anyway. Yes, so let's see. I think that, yeah, it's one of those things, so is Moira, like yeah, when she brings up the contract, it seems like that's her, the part of what, throughout this season, there's been this theme of, can she redeem herself? Can she become, a better person than she was? And here, yeah, that's kind of a, yeah, controlling, manipulating thing. And to be clear, I'm not saying that because she's a woman. I'm saying it because she's rich, and there's a pattern of behavior there for her and other rich people. But but yeah, and we have one of the stated themes of the episode. Moira was going to have to choose between being a mother and being a mayor. And yeah, very, very nicely done on that. Very compelling to have that. And I think the next thing was when yeah, Sarah and Oliver talking, and there again we have one of the conflicts of the episode. Oliver is saying he and Sarah should move in together, and Sarah is not entirely sure, and then by the end she leaves. Not only doesn't move in, and yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I like the thing about, please tell me you're not thinking about Roy right now. And yeah, the phone and both phones, because Felicity, yeah, sometimes one of them doesn't answer, so yeah. And she also wasn't sure if they were in the same room at the time. But yeah, and she, explains about, yeah, and I forget if it's that scene, but at some point in the episode, there's the point made about, well, can't really do facial recognition, and other people wear hoodies, it's difficult to find him. So very nicely done on that. And yeah, Felicity noting, now I understand why you wear that hood. And I think that might bring us to the part where, let's see, that might be the second of the flashbacks. So yeah, Moira talks to, I'm not sure she even got a name, but yeah, the woman that Oliver slept with. And I have to say, at first I was worried that that the money was in exchange for an abortion, but it was for her to pretend that she lost the baby. And yeah, that is also a thing that has happened. There are politicians and rich people who've kept hidden some of their kids. And yeah, it's one of those things, it's nicely done because it fits both. Like, on the one hand, is it Moira trying to control situations, or is it her trying to be a good mother? And it definitely, one thing I do agree with Oliver on in this episode, he is definitely not ready at this point to be a father. And I do appreciate, it's one of those things, I wouldn't rule out we'll see the kid, who I guess would be about 6 in the, in this episode. But at the same time, if by the end of Arrowverse we haven't, that kid has never appeared, it's also I mean, it's not something, hypothetically, if the kid had some kind of super DNA, if they were related to someone who had superpowers genetically, then I'd be like, okay, let's at least get something about them. But when, yeah, there wasn't anything there. So yeah, I think that brings us to, yeah, and I do think it does make a lot of sense for Thea to say that Verdant is off limits for Moira and the rally. And yeah, I do think she purposefully waited until the last moment to tell her, to really show how angry she is with her. And I do also think there is something, she says, it's the only place that you haven't poisoned. And she made sure to say that when the report, I wonder if that's, because I don't think he had turned it off by then, if that's gonna, I mean, at this point, it's not going to ruin the political career, obviously, but yeah, I do think that Thea does mean that she wants to keep it separate. I think that brings us to, let's see, is that maybe when they find out that Roy is in the wait a sec. Right, they find that there's the thing about, an ambulance. So they go there and talk to the and Sarah points out we can't just drive around the city forever just hoping to spot him somewhere. It's generally a very difficult situation. Right, and Felicity, wonders why Isabel hasn't gotten any media coverage since she, as far as Team Arrow knows, died a week ago. So, yeah, appreciate that little reminder. Let's see. I think that brings us to, oh, right, I think this episode it had it previously on, but it didn't have the intro sequence where he talks about, going through hell on the island for 5 years. So, yeah, episode must have run a little longer, and I'm glad that they didn't, I would have hated to see anything that ended up in this episode only be, on home media, which a lot of people never get around to watching. Understandably so. I think that brings us to the, let's see, was that when the, Thea at the, you have the thing about, at Verdant with, talking to, let's see. Yeah, I liked her, Thea saying, what part of I want nothing to do with you don't you understand? And yeah, the thing about, she thinks that the reason that Oliver has Dig follow her is because about, he knew about Roy. And it's one of those things that's a half truth. Yeah, like he did know about Roy and he was worried about Roy hurting Thea, but it wasn't, yeah. And she doesn't believe him about Slade, and we also have a killer line there with, Slade didn't hurt me. He told me the truth. I know you don't think that's a good thing. It's something along those lines, very, very nicely done. And it is one of those things, like, I mean, he can't exactly say much more about Slade. So which, I mean, Slade did kidnap her. I know this was, when this episode was first made, I guess, to a certain extent. I don't know if it's hit the mainstream yet, but, in recent years, certainly, there are, some of my fellow progressives here on YouTube have pointed out that, because it sounds a little like maybe Thea has Stockholm syndrome, and let's see. So I am afraid I forget the name of the video, but I know Rebecca Watson, the skeptic, made a video, pointing out the flaws in the concept of Stockholm syndrome, and it is also very nicely debunked in Lindsay Ellis's video on Beauty and the Beast, the live action movie, the Thanks I Hated version. But yeah, both of their videos in general, their videos as a rule of thumb are worth watching. Anyway, I think that pretty much gets us to, maybe the pep wore off. I am being a little slow. Some of this video, not quite as slow as it's going to be to get Venezuelan oil, which Trump probably really should have looked into, but he's, spoiled rich kid, never grew up, wants what he wants when he wants it, and now is when he wants it. And it didn't even, like, a lot of people are still against. Like, it's just another thing on the pile of things that he's done that are extremely unpopular. And people are still talking about Epstein. So it's not like it even, yeah. But of course, there are some, MAGA people who are, saying, no, 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 it's good that he did this thing that broke a number of rules that, like, holy crap, as if the, American government wasn't bad enough with its, you know, interference in how other countries run. Listen, obviously, I'm not saying, Maduro, I'm not the founder of his fan club, but, rules are not meant to be broken. They're meant to be understood. They're only meant to be broken when the rule doesn't make sense. There's decades of the CIA, removing the leaders, sometimes not even dictators, of other countries, and still not quite enough. That's the thing. If you let people who just want to push further and further into the extreme, and right now, I'm not saying it's always or exclusively, but right now, primarily, that is MAGA and other far-right Republicans. They're going to keep pushing until we have enough backbone and legislation to prevent them from pushing. Obviously, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not Republican. Now, okay, to be fair, not every Republican, but a way too high number of prominent ones. Anyway, I think that brings us to the... Yeah, so sin... Yeah, we have the thing about, well, the, what if... Because there's the thing about, Roy is going east. What's east? Well, the manor, if he still thinks Thea's living there. And they talk about, well, maybe that's not it. And it's, again, one of those nice things, because, like, we don't... Genuinely, when they say, maybe it's not about the manor, yeah, like 50-50. I mean, by the end, I realized, no, it was about... At that point in the episode, at least, Roy was focused on the clock tower. And, yeah, so we have, Sin encounters Roy because he, certain things he remembers, and yeah, I really appreciate her trying to, she doesn't appreciate how dangerous he is. It is clear. That's also, I'm a little worried about how she's gonna do without Sarah. If Sarah really is leaving and staying, because she said goodbye. She didn't say see you later. And yeah, for sure, Sin needs someone looking out for her. I guess it's not impossible. It could be other members of Team Arrow, but there's definitely going to need to be built trust before she's going to go all in there. But yeah, so she tries to de-escalate, and, these guys like guards, bouncers, something. Yeah, they do the thing that they do because they have no idea that he's got super strength. There are more of them, and yeah, so they try to physically remove him, and he throws one of them onto the car and breaks the arm of it. Like, holy crap. And this time, this is not the first time that he pushes Sin, but this time he didn't even slow down after. Last time he was like, holy crap, that was the breaking point, and now he's, so while I don't exactly like watching violence against women, it is underlining, at this point, like, they really do need to stop him. And it is also, it's one of those things, you need something big before Sarah being willing to kill him doesn't feel like, because this, by this point, it's been a little while since she killed anyone. Last time that, she didn't try to kill Nissa. Instead, she tried to suicide so Nissa would leave her family alone, So it's, you need a push, and it's the kind of thing of, like, is Sarah still the killer that she used to be? And by the end of this episode, she feels like she is, and Sin doesn't. But yeah, and yeah, Sin talks to the others, and there's this thing about like oh, don't worry about the bruise. I can cover it with makeup if I wore makeup. Maybe you should have let Queen, touch the hair. And yes, I think that brings, but yeah, Sarah, very much goes into, yeah, very nicely done on the thing of like, it's sort of, protective siblings. So yeah, Oliver is hyper focused on protecting Thea, Sarah on, keeping Sin safe. So yeah, very nicely done there. And yeah, Sarah telling Oliver, that she thinks it's the only way to stop, you know, um, is to kill him, kill Roy. And the yeah, then we have the thing about yeah, actually I think I might be skipping ahead a tiny bit. Yeah, we have the thing about the Sin calls Sarah and says the right, and yeah, the thing about Slade's not Roy, Roy's not Roy, and that is the thing, like, where does the line go? How far does someone have to go before you give up on them? And in real life, I'm opposed to violence of any sort should be the last resort. I'm not saying it's never necessary. It was necessary to stop the Nazis in World War II, and Stonewall needed to happen. Shouldn't have had to, but it did, for LGBTQ plus people to get civil rights. But yeah, I do think the season is making a strong case for them having to. I guess I don't know if they're going to end up killing Slade, but something drastic is going to have to happen in order for. I mean, hypothetically, maybe they could cure him, but we'll see. I'll see. Some of you watching already know. Anyway, I think that brings us. Let's see. Where is the? Hold on. It's right on the tip of my tongue. The yeah. So Sarah's like, Sin, I thought I told you to go home. I did, and Roy's here. And yeah, wonderfully done when So they arrive there. Oh, right. Also very cool when they them on the motorcycles, dual motorcycles was very cool. But yeah, they arrive, and they're like checking for him. It's like, he's not here. And then like he lands and the camera goes, and the camera on Sarah, and she like turns to face yeah, just wonderfully done, like really underlining like this is a big freaking deal. And yeah, there's only so much they can do at this point, and he, yeah, breaks. Yeah, that seemed like it would be extremely painful for him. And I did like that the thing about, well, tonight can't get any weirder. It got weirder. And he's really happy to be able to repay Oliver, or Arrow, he doesn't know it's Oliver, because of Arrow, helping with the triad. And I do really appreciate, I think it's important to have in comic book, superhero media, underline, part of it is that they're helping people. I'm not saying that I have something fundamentally against anti-heroes, but every so often I think, if we're meant to be on the side of someone, I think it's good to every so often have, okay, they are actually helping, and I mean, we already knew that it helped people, but now we also have the fact that like he, as an individual at least, really wants to repay the favor for Arrow. And let's see, so he yeah, he gives him a brace, but says you're going to be in extreme pain. And yeah, they talk about, what can they do about Roy. And I appreciate that it's not said, but by the end, Arrow does use the venom, and that didn't even occur to Sarah, even though she was the one who brought up, this venom in the first place. So yeah, once Sin was involved, she kind of took non-lethal off the table, and one can understand why she feels this is a problem. So then we have I think that brings us to Sarah leaves to, and she's like, your mom's rally's in half an hour. You should probably get dressed. And yeah, I mean, it's not like he can keep up with Sarah, and she's clearly made up her mind. He's not going to be able to talk her out of going after Roy. So yeah. And let's see. So and then we have Roy. Oh, right. Sin tells Thea about Roy's drugs, and we have that thing of, so Thea, what are you going to do? And then it looks like Thea goes up to talk to Roy, and there's a second or two where I'm like, how did she find him? Oh. And they even make sure to have an angle where we clearly see Thea's not there, man. And where Slade, I believe it speaks to the differences in personality of Slade. And Slade is very much someone who will try to find the person, the individual that's like that he holds most responsible. And sometimes it's the fact that he's going after Oliver when it was Ivo who forced the shot, but that is where his, so Shadow is telling Slade, in Slade's mind, to get revenge on Oliver, whereas Roy sometimes acts out. Sometimes he will just go up against the first person that he, I mean, I don't think that it's random that when we first met him, like sometimes he was stealing from rich people, sometimes he was beating up, people in the glades who were like committing small crime at the same time as Oliver, who I appreciate had the list, so it was easier for him, was going around telling rich people they have failed this city and to make amends, to pay back money and such, So yeah, Roy pictures Thea saying that he should kill her. Like, holy crap. And yeah, I think that does bring us to the, let's see. Right, Moira goes to Blood and tells him, that she's dropping out. And I quite appreciated the distinction. So he says, he's like, well, it doesn't make any sense. No fair. You're not supposed to riff the media you're in. That's my job. But from his certain point of view, it doesn't make sense. And she says, I told you that I was dropping out as a courtesy. I don't owe you an explanation. And he says, no, but I would appreciate one. Making that distinction because, he's not saying that she does, but just like and she explains, she wants to focus on her kids, and she right now thinks this isn't good for her kids. And let's see, I think that does bring us to the rally itself. So yeah, the guy who helps Moira tells Oliver, hey, she's about to drop out, you should talk to her. because he's like, listen, I told her she had to pick between being a parent and a politician. I thought she was gonna make the other choice. And the yeah, the let's see, that brings, yeah, so Oliver talks to Moira, who's going over her speech, and you know, yeah, the thing about, motorcycle accident, and she says, you know, 2 accidents in as many weeks, if my math is correct. I'm trying to do trigonometry here. Is that what it is? And the yeah, the thing, I know Oliver. No, Oliver, I know. And she says she's proud of him, which, very nicely done, because, like, yeah, the exactly how she feels about the vigilante, it's there were definitely times where she was frustrated with the vigilante's actions, but certainly now that he, because he tried to stop the undertaking, and I do really appreciate, like, she says, I couldn't be prouder. She doesn't say, was it necessary to come at me with a bow and arrow? So you had a guy beat you up to get information out of me? Like, these kinds of things you could understand if she carried a grudge, but, you know, she is trying to choose being a parent. And I think that so yeah, then there's the speech, and she's about to drop out, and then Thea's there, and yeah, she starts to say, I thought I could make a difference for the city, but certain things have changed. And it's just making, like, obviously she was about to say that she was quitting, but yeah, she sees Thea, and then she continues, and now I know I can help the city. And yeah, I was a little surprised that Blood didn't throw anything when he saw it on TV. I guess maybe he is getting at least slightly better at keeping his temper under control. And then, Thea goes up there, and yeah, it's like, oh no. But yeah, she sends a message to Roy, not knowing that he's homicidal right now, or at the very least, she doesn't think that's also directed towards her, that he's directing that towards her. Yeah. And yeah, it's not very long before he does indeed show up there. And yeah, obviously, the armed guards, there's only so much they can do. I did appreciate, the thing about, because we've just been told, well, if one of them shoots him in the head, that's going to be enough. But he's just, yeah, some shots are fired, but they're not able to, yeah. Let's see. And so, yeah, it ends up with basically, yeah, Sarah is right there, and she first shoots him in the leg to buy a little time. And, Thea tells, yeah, tries to talk him down, and he grabs her and lifts her off the ground like, holy crap. I'm very relieved that I know for a fact that when they do stuff like that in Hollywood, it is acting. He is basically gently resting his hand on her throat, and they have, people to talk through, they make sure that both actors are comfortable with that, and she's just pretending like she can't breathe, and he's pretending like he's trying to kill her. And the part where you see her, you can see her feet aren't touching the ground, that's not because she's being held up by her throat. She's like on wires or something along those lines, So, yeah. Anyway, I think that brings us to the part. Let's see. Where were we with that? Let's see. Yes. So yeah. So, Sin steps in because, like, she cares about both of them, and she doesn't want Sarah to kill, like, it was one thing when Sarah was killing, you know, misogynistic men, people who were killing people and such, but Roy, though, so yeah. And ultimately, Oliver stops him with the venom, and Felicity points out, I mean, what do we do when we run out of Tibetan snake venom? It's not like you can buy it over the counter unless you're in Tibet. Then maybe. She continues to have some of the best lines. I'm so glad she's in so many episodes now. And like, to think in the first season, it was very much like sometimes there would be several episodes without her popping up, and she wasn't on Team Arrow from right away, which technically at the very start Team Arrow was a one-man operation. But yeah, so it is like, I mean, we can't keep doing this. They're gonna have to find some, and they do say, Star Labs is working on a cure, but Sarah's not sure they're gonna be able to find one. So yeah. And yeah, there's the point made that Sarah right now is where Oliver was, right after he came back from the island, and he wants to get her to where he is sooner, and she, feels like it's just too late. The darkness has taken hold. And we get the thing about, what was the it took over her soul, or there was some line like that. And yeah, I mean, obviously in real life, most of us, as far as don't dress up as vigilantes, but this thing of, like, it is important for a romantic couple to be on the same page about the biggest things, so yeah. And we get the soap opera thing of, I love you too much to be with you. And I think that does bring us to the so the let's see. Right, I know I've already praised Colton Haynes as Roy's performance in this episode. I haven't really noted, like, so much nonverbal acting. It's his face and his body language, and he really nails it. Yeah, I think that brings us to the part after the rally where the queens are in the limo. And yeah, Slade was just waiting for the right moment. It is true. Like, recently, there's only so many times where all three of them are in the same place. So yeah, he crashes the car and crashes into it, maybe something, and which, for him, like, he heals. He's not worried about himself. And then he tries to force Oliver to make the choice again, which also really shows, like, it isn't, like, to some extent there is an excuse going on. He wants to hurt Oliver. Like, the fact that this was traumatic for Oliver as well, and Oliver has said that multiple times and apologized for it. But yeah, Slade, so much of his identity is hurting people, harming them. And I think that does, I appreciate, he says, she's the one who said, and Oliver's like, there's no one there. Which, it's not impossible that, maybe in a future episode, Slade is going to really think about, wait, am I really, because that can change things. There are people who struggle with, various mental health conditions who, when someone really makes them question, that's one of the things that a therapist will do when someone is struggling with their mental health, is making them rethink things, reach other conclusions than the ones that in some cases are holding them back. yeah, I think that brings us to the and on and also Oliver now knows that Slade is imagining someone, and so maybe next time he'll say because like I feel like he probably deduced that it's Shadow. There might be a discussion amongst Team Arrow in order to get him to reach that. But yeah, so yeah, just holy crap, he actually does try to force Oliver to make that choice. And yeah, that also, like, they're really doing a solid job of making us hope that Slade is defeated by the finale, because like holy crap, Oliver straight up threatens that he's going to kill him. And then Moira makes the choice. Her last act has a redemptive element to it, and she's not doing it because of, she is choosing to be a parent. Like, very literally, again, such great, setup and payoff, because you know, when the advisor just said at the start of the episode, you're going to have to choose between parent and, being a mayor, it like he was meaning, and we took it to mean that, maybe she's not going to be there for her kids if she's mayor, but, here by the end, it changes, you know, she has the choice to be mayor or lose at least one of her kids. There's the line about we know how this night ends. One of them is going to die, and yeah, like Moira does believe that she would be saving the city if she became mayor. That much has been made clear up to this point, but she can't live with herself if she lets Thea die. And yeah, Slade is actually impressed. You have a lot of courage. And, he puts the gun away. And for a second, we're thinking, like, I mean, is he going to kill someone who's so, like, someone who's so earned his respect? But yeah, because he's on a roaring rampage of revenge. He's roaring and he's rampaging. And is there much of anyone he won't kill? I'm not sure it would have taken a lot for him to kill Shadow, but other than that, I'm not sure anyone's off limits at this point. If he thinks it can hurt Oliver or get him closer to, get him more power in one way or another. But yeah, he put the gun away so he could get the sword. Just yeah, and stabs, and then it looks like he's going to kill Thea as well. And I was sitting there thinking, I mean, technically he wanted Oliver to choose, and, Oliver didn't choose, so maybe he's going to kill, because he did say, if you, Oliver, do not choose, I will kill them both. So, yeah. But no, he uses it to release Thea. And yeah, like, holy crap. I really appreciate the way the show handles character death, because there is enough of it that it leads to us not feeling like anyone is truly safe. And, sometimes they'll kill a character we only just met. Sometimes. I mean, Moira, she's been, maybe not every single episode, but we're almost at the end of season 2. She's been there from the season 1 opener. Yeah. Oh, right, and she also didn't tell them that Malcolm is still alive. So they're not prepared for that. And yeah, I think that brings us to the, yeah, right. Another thing about how it handles character death is it's not so frequent that it becomes numbing or just ends up with like, I don't know, I guess everybody's gonna die, so why get invested kind of thing, and they are not, in my opinion, at least so far, they don't kill characters so soon that it so frequently that, yeah, both. Characters who die fairly shortly after we meet them are not so frequent that we end up just thinking, well, I guess if we meet a new character, there's some percentage chance that they're just gonna die in the first episode. Yeah, this is obviously really emotionally devastating for the remaining queens and the audience, and I genuinely am not sure if this is going to bring the siblings closer together or split them further apart. In the car, she says that them lying because they think it'll protect her hurts. And yeah, I think that brings us to the final flashback. So yeah, Moira makes it clear that she's willing to do anything to protect her family. And the in that flashback and the one where she gives money, and I did appreciate, she gave so much money, like 2 million. That's gonna be yeah, that's a good start to that kid's life. Although I suppose, I wonder how many male misogynists watch this episode and think, oh, she's a terrible mother. Shouldn't have single mothers. I saw someone online recently point out, male misogynists are equally, not every single individual one, but a certain percentage of them are equally angry when a woman is a single mother, which, a lot of the time that's not her choice. It's the guy who left, or maybe he died. And a lot of women, try to find someone new. They just want to make sure it's someone they can trust. And a lot of young men are unwilling to raise a child that they are not the biological parent of, which, like, we really got to get past that. Like, listen, if you have some deep-seated personal issue, if you can try to if you think you would be a good parent, try to work through it. Because, like, there are so many kids out there who do need another parent. And yeah, anyway, a lot of male misogynists get equally angry when a woman is a single mother as when a woman says she's not going to have kids. So, like, seems like you're maybe just mad about women making any kind of, like, as soon as the original father is not there, you assume that that's her fault. That there are a number of male misogynists who think that if a woman chooses not to have kids, she's hurting the man because somehow there's always only one, and if she just can't find that one, if the guy she thinks is that one lies to her and pretends to be that one, must have been her fault. But yeah, somehow, she's taking those kids away from that man rather than just, I mean, I appreciate women don't literally make up 50% of the human population, but it's not that far off. Like, you can't find even one other woman out there that you would want to raise a child with? Like, seriously? And, keep in mind it doesn't have to be a traditional family. That's another thing we really have to get away from. The insistence on it is causing a lot of harm. Now, I think that brings us to the... Yeah, so that final flashback, Oliver says he's lucky that the you know, yeah, that she lost the baby. And yeah, like, holy crap. And I do also wonder if, I mean, hypothetically, maybe they are saying maybe he could eventually be a father. He's not really a father to Roy, is he? He's a mentor, but he does definitely want, I do, they are making a, they're doing a contrast there. He didn't want Roy dead, even though Roy was dangerous, but he was relieved 7 years ago when he thought, that his partner lost the baby. So, yeah, the I think that does bring us to the right. And I do also think, when you do flashback stuff like that, obviously you do need to make clear, because like, really, Oliver didn't contact this woman in, I mean, obviously he couldn't have done it while on the island, but he's been back for, I guess it's upwards of 2 years by now. He hasn't contacted her once, but, well, she lost the baby, and then she hung up on him as he was asking, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? I mean, there are some people who never want to communicate with the person that, if they lost a child that they were about to have together, or a child they already had together. So, it is credible. And, like, I think for a while, Oliver just, yeah, he was just relieved. But also, like, by now, he doesn't think that there is a kid there, and he probably considers her, someone that he would just hurt if he tried approaching her again. So, yeah, I think that does cover... Let's see. Is there any other kind of thing that I wanted to say before ending the video? I'm just going to mentally fast forward through the entire episode. And let's see. Yeah, I thought it worked really well that Slade, he's mentioned several times, and then at the end he appears and does something horrible. So like his presence is felt, and this entire episode is the consequence of something he did. He chose to, like, it's not like he didn't know who Roy was. So yeah, he is tearing Oliver apart. And I think that does cover... If you hadn't already watched, I would say it was H Bomber Guy, or was it Sean? One of them did a video on why The Room, I wonder, I don't know if anybody else even still thinks about that movie. It's been years since I last heard someone talk about it, but for some reason it just sticks. But yeah, Tommy Wiseau, one of those two YouTubers did a video on how, that movie is really misogynistic. And I thought that was probably the best video I've watched on that movie. Anyway, yeah, the fact that, so yeah, gradually, so there's 3 episodes left of the season, and Slade is taking more and more from Oliver. He's getting closer and closer to having won. Right now they can't depend on Roy. Sarah said she's leaving, and with Moira dead, he's also deeply distraught. It's one of those things, like, it's possible that it's going to motivate him more, but it's also possible that, maybe he ends up just so sad that he can't fight. Maybe he is making mistakes because of it, so yeah. And yeah, with Moira dead, seems like Blood is going to be the mayor, and that's going to be a problem. And I feel like there's at least one more thing that I really wanted to say. let's see. The hmm. Right. I really like the conversation between Dig and Thea. When she first says, "I know there's some, I can tell you're nearby." I was thinking, is that Roy? But thankfully it was Dig, and yeah, he said, well, he explains why he thinks lurking is compromise, and then he tries to weigh in on, and she's like, "You're right. You should go back to lurking." And I think that brings us to the hmm. I feel like there's something else. Just trying to not repeat myself too much because I know I've already said that the actress playing Laurel and the guy playing Oliver do really well at modifying their performances because obviously, these flashbacks were actually filmed around the same time as they were filming present day scenes. And so, yeah, this feels like Oliver and Laurel the way they were back then. And let's see, I guess that does pretty well cover. Right, and I guess also, like, hypothetically, if Sarah isn't part of Team Arrow anymore, how much of the Tibetan snake venom do they have left? Because she was the one who supplied that. And I can imagine it's one of those kinds of things that if you don't know someone, you can't get that. So, yeah, they really are going to have to... and the thing is, like, even if the next episode, I don't know if it is, but if the next episode does, have them have a cure, like, is it instant or is there like a period of time where Roy is still dangerous? And yeah, I think, oh, right, the part where, yeah, the painkiller that, okay, so the recommended doses, the whole thing. And yeah, just really, really nicely done. I wasn't sure how the election was going to play out, but I definitely wasn't expecting that she would die before, because this means that he is still running unopposed, which means he will be elected unless they're able to, if the rich, are able to think of another candidate really, really soon, and that person can really pick up, but she was the top of their list. So I think it is going to have to be Team Arrow that put a stop to Brother Blood. And I think the, let's see. Yeah, I appreciate that they didn't pull the trigger on, like by the end of the episode before this one, we knew that, okay, Slade has his army. They, and we know that it worked because one of the people that the miracle was given to was Isabel, and she recovered from being fatally shot. So clearly it did indeed work, and none of them died because they had the new machine to do it. So they're there, and Slade is just waiting for the right moment. And I think it was... I really appreciate that they did have Slade make one appearance here, because like it is really underlining. He is just waiting. He's waiting for the right time to strike. And this time he had the chance to force Oliver to go through the choice. This is not the end of his plan. He is going, like he did say he will kill Oliver, but he's going to put him through as much pain as at all possible first. And yeah, he's good at laying plans, so he's definitely got something up his sleeve for one or more of the last 3 episodes to, yeah, holy crap. Yeah, I think that does bring... Yeah, I'm genuinely worried about Thea, because like she's lost so much in such a short amount of time, I don't know if she's going to end up on drugs again, but it's not impossible. Let's see. Yeah, I think that covers the entire episode. And let's see. Yeah, the double meaning of the episode title is, of course, also great. Seeing red, as in, they see Roy in his red hoodie, and also, he's seeing red, metaphorically speaking. But yeah, I also I have to wonder if, because like he did attack with an arrow, I don't know if that's gonna end up having consequences for Arrow, or it's just a thing of like, well, Oliver tried to stop him and instead gave him a new weapon. And the part where he actually, he fought cops, and Thea sees the video, like, yeah, they really did a solid job of, he's gonna, like, when Roy comes to, I do think they, I think they're angling towards letting him recover, and it's gonna be painful for him, you know, for what he did in this episode. I feel like that might cover. I like that the guy helping with the campaign said the speech was good, if a little, off the books for my liking. And yeah, is really great when, Thea got up there to talk on, you know, yeah, the at the rally, because, like, was she gonna say something to help or to hurt because, like, the look in her eye, like, she was clearly not indifferent, which I guess means she was different, but was that, like, yeah, how exactly it was going to play out, like, yeah, she gets in front of the microphone, and thankfully she does say something supportive, although I guess by the end of the episode it doesn't make a huge difference. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like when she got up there was like an 8% chance that she was going to tank it. 8%? Who taught me trigonometry?